Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're diving deep today into a story that's both fascinating and tragic. The life of Diddy, the death of Biggie Smalls, and all the kind of the web of allegations surrounding it all. You guys sent in a really interesting collection of stuff, articles and interviews. But the one that really stood out was that conversation with Gene Deal, Diddy's former bodyguard.
Yeah, it's one of those stories that goes way beyond the headlines.
Yes.
Gives you a glimpse into like this world where loyalty and power just kind of like collide in the music industry. And Deal's perspective is like especially interesting. I mean, he was right there with Diddy the whole time, witnessed his rise, saw the events that led up to that night, 97.
Yeah, and Deal, he doesn't hold back. I mean, he paints Diddy as this uh, ruthless and ambitious figure, like willing to do whatever it takes to protect himself and his empire, you know what I mean? But before we dive into all the serious accusations, let's rewind a bit. Let's look at Diddy's early days. Deal actually shares some pretty vivid stories about Diddy's, early hustle and his connection to this group called the Same Gang in Harlem.
Oh yeah, and the Same Gang. This wasn't just some like casual friends hanging out. They were seriously connected to the streets.
Yeah.
Deal actually describes how Diddy had to go through this like really intense initiation to join. Like he was literally chased down and roughed up. They like tested his loyalty and like this toughness. It's a real glimpse into the environment that shaped Diddy. I mean, this was a world where power and respect were hard earned.
Really makes you think about the kind of person you gotta be to not just survive, but to thrive in that world. Deal even mentions this notorious drug kingpin, Alpo, who saw something in Diddy. He predicted that he was going to be a major player.
Definitely speaks to Diddy's charisma and ambition, right? Even though he wasn't like directly involved in the drug trade like some of his associates, he had a real knack for spotting opportunities and making things happen, throwing parties, managing artists, bringing this like new edgy energy to the music scene. And it was around this time that Deal started working for him, became like a constant fixture in Diddy's inner circle.
It wasn't all smooth sailing, though, right? Deal talks about this tragic event, kind of feels like a turning point in their relationship, the City College tragedy in 91. This crowd crush at an event that Diddy was hosting. 9 people died. Deal claims he warned Diddy about the overcrowding, but his concerns were ignored. You can just hear the pain in Deal's voice when he talks about it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this wasn't some minor thing. This was people losing their lives.
Yeah.
And Deal seems to have carried that weight ever since. He even talks about having nightmares about that night. It makes you think, how this event could have been like the first seed of doubt about Diddy. Like his willingness to put his ambitions above the safety of others.
And it's not an isolated incident either. Deal mentions another situation, a pretty disturbing one, involving Diddy and his girlfriend at the time, Kim Porter, had to rush to the hospital after some kind of altercation between the two.
Yeah, apparently Porter had injured Diddy with a corkscrew, defending herself, but Deal saying that Diddy was way more worried about like what it would do to his career than, Porter's well-being. Really makes you question, his priorities, the image versus the reality.
Yeah, stark contrast to the public persona that Diddy cultivated, right? That charming, larger-than-life figure. Deal's account is suggesting this, like, darker side of ruthlessness that just becomes more apparent as Diddy's fame and power grow.
And as his success explodes, so do the potential threats. The stakes get higher. Deal describes this growing sense of unease, especially when they would go to L.A. He's claiming that he got multiple warnings about threats against Diddy and Biggie's lives while they were out there.
Well, it was the peak of that, East Coast, West Coast rivalry in hip hop, all that media hype and escalating tensions between artists and their crews. And, Diddy and Biggie, representing Bad Boy Records from New York, walking right into the heart of that storm.
It wasn't just about the music, though. Deal's suggesting that there are these deeper, more personal layers to the beef. Some people believe Diddy was involved in Tupac's murder. Others were furious about an incident where Biggie had insulted some L.A. gang members.
So you got this volatile mix of personal vendettas, street politics, and the intense pressure cooker of the music industry. And Deal's saying he's getting warnings from all sides, trying to, sound the alarm.
One of the most chilling warnings came from a drug kingpin named Unique. This guy was locked up with El Chapo. And Deal says Unique actually got a message to him, warning of imminent danger. Like, think about that for a second. A message coming straight from one of the most notorious figures in the criminal underworld, and it's aimed at Diddy and Biggie.
That's a detail that sends chills down your spine, man. But even with all these warnings, Deal says Diddy was dismissive, refused to even acknowledge the danger. He even told Deal, I don't want to hear that expletive.
That's a crucial point, right? Deal claims he tried to tell him how serious these threats were, but Diddy just seemed like either totally oblivious or deliberately choosing to ignore them. Kind of arrogance, like he was invincible. And, well, that might have had some tragic consequences.
Deal even mentions hearing from someone named Chaz, I think it was, who backed up Unique's warning. It's like this growing network of people aware of the danger surrounding Diddy and Biggie. But Diddy was like living in a bubble, focused on his music, his parties, his rising stardom.
So you've got this backdrop of escalating tension. It's like a powder keg waiting to explode. And in the middle of it all, you have Diddy seemingly oblivious or just plain unwilling to acknowledge the danger swirling around him.
And as we know, that danger would soon turn deadly.
Yeah, and that brings us to that night in March of '97, Deal's account of what happened leading up to Biggie's murder.
Yeah.
It's so detailed, and it really paints a picture of a night where, like, every decision just brings them closer to this tragedy.
It all starts at the Peterson Automotive Museum party, right? Like, all the big names in music were there. The atmosphere was electric, but Deal's saying he was on high alert, especially after those warnings.
He talks about arriving with a small security team trying to, like, keep a perimeter around Diddy and Biggie, but it was, impossible. Diddy was in his element, throwing money around, partying hard, and seemingly oblivious to the danger just lurking around them. Deal even says Diddy ignored him when he was trying to keep the security tight, He wanted to mingle and be in the spotlight.
It's almost like Diddy's fame and that chaotic party environment created this, like, blind spot, made him think he was invincible and disregard the very real threats around him.
Exactly. And that disregard seems to extend to Biggie's safety, too.
Yeah.
Remember, Biggie was recovering from that car accident. He was having trouble walking. When it was time to leave, Deal was ready to stay by Biggie's side, but Diddy insisted that Deal get in the car with him.
Seems like a huge mistake, right? This major security lapse. By pulling Deal into the car, Diddy basically neutralized his own bodyguard, leaving Biggie exposed. It's like he cared more about his own comfort and sense of security than Biggie's.
And as they're leaving the museum, Deal sees something that chills him to the bone. There's this man from the Nation of Islam standing nearby watching their group the group. Deal feels uneasy, but he can't do anything stuck in the car with Diddy. It just adds to this feeling of dread, like things are falling into place for something awful to happen.
Yeah. It's like watching a car crash in slow motion. You just can't look away. And then as they're pulling out of the driveway, a car pulls up alongside Biggie's SUV. Shots ring out, shattering the night.
Deal describes it as pure chaos. Someone yells that Biggie's been hit, and Diddy's driver, Kenny, just speeds off in a panic. Deal and another bodyguard jump into a second SUV and try to chase the other car, but they lose him in the LA streets.
It's heartbreaking to even imagine the confusion and terror of that moment, right?
Right.
The realization that those warnings they ignored had become a horrifying reality.
Deal says he was able to talk to Biggie right after the shooting. He was conscious in pain, but his words were fading. Deal's urging him to stay awake to fight, but tragically, those would be Biggie's last moments of consciousness.
Those final moments, the fading words, the race to the hospital, it's a weight that Deal still carries today. He describes the smell of Biggie's blood and urine, the feeling of helplessness as he watched his friend die. It's a really haunting account.
And this is where the story takes another turn, adding to the mystery and suspicion around Biggie's death. Deal claims that even though there was a hospital like 2 blocks from the museum, Kenny Diddy's driver insisted on driving to a hospital 30 minutes away.
Wait, what? That makes zero sense. Why would they delay getting Biggie medical attention?
It's the question that's been hanging over this story for years. Deal describes a frantic ride to the hospital. Diddy screaming in the back, Biggie slowly dying. And before losing consciousness, Biggie says his final words, just a simple phrase, just do it.
Those words are haunting, right? Just adding another layer of mystery to this whole thing. What did he mean? Was he trying to say something, or were they just random words from a dying man?
It just adds to the weight of it all.
Yeah.
And by the time they got to the hospital, it was too late. Biggie was gone. Deal describes the scene as pure chaos, police ambulances, the media all descending on the hospital.
Imagine being right in the middle of all that, losing your friend, the weight of those final moments, and realizing the world was about to change forever.
And for Deal, Biggie's death was just the beginning. He says after the shooting, he was basically shunned by Diddy and Bad Boy Records.
Why? What? It wasn't his fault. He was trying to protect Biggie. It's like he was punished for witnessing a crime.
Deal believes Diddy was trying to control the story, shift the blame away from himself. He claims he even heard rumors that Diddy was spreading, saying Dio was somehow responsible for Biggie's death.
Man, that's cold. Instead of grieving together, it's like Diddy turned on his own bodyguard just to protect his image and his empire.
And Dio's accusations go even deeper. He suggests that Diddy might have had a reason for wanting Biggie gone. Remember, at the time, Biggie was about to finish his contract with Bad Boy and start his own label.
So Biggie was about to become a competitor, right? Potentially taking some of Diddy's biggest artists with him.
Exactly. So if Diddy saw him as a threat, maybe he wasn't as broken up about Biggie's death as he seemed in public. Deal even suggests that Diddy might have been in debt to some dangerous people, and Biggie's death could have been a way to pay them off.
We're getting into some dark territory here, and it's important to remember these are just allegations. But Deal's account, along with all those unanswered questions about Biggie's murder, it paints a pretty disturbing picture.
And it raises questions about Diddy's character, right? His willingness to use people and discard them, even the ones closest to him. Deal goes as far as to compare Diddy to Jeffrey Epstein, suggesting he might be using his power and influence to exploit people and keep them silent.
Whoa, now that's a serious comparison. And it's important to remember that Diddy has never been charged with anything related to Biggie's death or any of these other accusations, but these allegations definitely cast a shadow over his legacy.
Yeah, it makes you wonder what other secrets might be hiding beneath the surface of Diddy's carefully crafted image,
Yeah, it's like there are these two Diddys, the one we see, the charismatic music mogul, and then this darker, more ruthless guy that Deal's describing makes you wonder how much of what we see is just an act.
It's a question you could ask about a lot of people in power, especially in entertainment. And Deal's suggesting there are others out there who know the truth, but they're too scared to talk.
Yeah, he talks about this culture of fear. People are afraid to cross Diddy or risk their careers by speaking out against him. Makes you think about the power dynamics, right? Like the potential for abuse when you have someone with that much wealth and influence.
And Deal even goes as far as to suggest that Diddy might have learned some of this from his own father, Melvin Combs. He says Melvin was involved in crime, maybe even working as an informant.
Wow, so Deal's painting a picture of this family history full of secrets and betrayal. Loyalty's a fragile thing, and survival means turning on the people closest to you.
He even says that Melvin Combs was killed by one of his own guys after he ratted them out to the cops. It's a chilling detail, right?
Oh, yeah.
Adds another layer to Diddy's story. Makes you wonder if those cycles of violence and deceit are just part of his family history.
Deal also drops some hints about potential evidence that could back up his claims. He mentions a police detective named Greg Kading who investigated Biggie and Tupac's murders. Deal says Kading kind of confirmed some of his suspicions about Diddy.
But those investigations went nowhere right. Did they ever find any real evidence linking Diddy to the murders?
Not that we know of, at least. But Deal seems to think there's a lot of information that's been buried, either to protect powerful people or because of, incompetence within law enforcement. He even mentions a recent news article that said Diddy's name came up 77 times in court documents related to Tupac's murder.
Oh, right, that article.
Yeah.
That was about a gangster named Dwayne Keith Davis. He's the one who claimed Diddy paid $1 million to have Tupac killed.
Yeah, but Diddy's denied any involvement in both murders, and Davis has been accused of making stuff up before.
So it's this tangled mess of accusations and denials. Hard to know what to believe. But the fact that Diddy's name keeps popping up in these investigations, it definitely raises some eyebrows, and it just keeps those conspiracy theories going.
And then you have the allegations of sexual misconduct. Deal says he saw Diddy acting inappropriately with women at parties, things like spiking drinks.
He mentions a situation with his own girlfriend and her friend. They felt weird after drinking champagne at one of Diddy's parties. They ended up passing out in his car, and Deal thinks maybe their drinks were messed with.
It's a scary thought, and it makes you wonder if those parties were more than just, lavish celebrations. Deal also talks about Diddy setting up these situations where two women and men would go into a room together, like it was a regular thing.
Yeah, it makes you think about the dark side of power and fame, how it can be used to exploit people, especially women. And Deal even compares Diddy to Harvey Weinstein, the Hollywood producer who was convicted of assault. He's suggesting there are people out there afraid to speak up against Diddy because they're worried about what he'll do to them.
Chilling stuff.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder how many other stories are out there, whispered in secret, silenced by fear and the weight of Diddy's power.
It's like Deal saying Diddy uses his power and money to avoid any consequences. He surrounds himself with people who enable him and silences anyone who threatens his image.
But even with all the darkness and the unanswered questions, one thing that really stands out in Deal's story is his loyalty to Biggie and his need to see justice done.
He talks about this really emotional meeting with Biggie's mother, Valletta Wallace. He held her hand and told her everything he knew about what happened that night. It was this moment of shared grief, recognizing the bond they both had with Biggie.
He said she was heartbroken, but also thankful for his honesty. Must have been a tough conversation, right? So much pain and years of unanswered questions.
Deal says Wallace has never trusted Diddy. She thinks he knows more about Biggie's death than he's saying. And I can see why. She lost her son, a talented young man, and she wants the truth.
After this deep dive into the world of Diddy and Biggie, I'm left with more questions than answers. Did Diddy have something to do with Biggie's death? Was he involved in Tupac's murder? Are those allegations about the women true? It's impossible to know for sure with what we have right now.
But it definitely shows you how complicated fame and power are, especially in the music industry. It's a cautionary tale, about unchecked ambition and how wealth and influence can corrupt people.
It's about the search for truth and justice, something that's still going on today. And it makes us question everything we think we know about the people we idolize and the stories we tell ourselves about success.
And maybe, just maybe, by talking about these stories, by questioning what we've been told, we can start to hold these powerful people accountable and create a world where talent and art aren't overshadowed by all the darkness and lies.
Powerful thought to end on. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep asking questions, keep digging, and keep searching for the truth wherever it might lead.